JC in the building. Appreciate you coming through, JC. As you come through, make sure to leave a comment this way. My bad. This way in the comment section. Always leave the comment in the comment section. Always hit the like button as you come in. And also, if you're in the archives, always leave the comment below the video. I get to all of them, and I get in my stream of thoughts as the show goes on, so I lose track of what's going on in the chat sometimes. So my apologies for that, but I definitely go back and watch all the chats. What's going on in the chat afterwards. So appreciate JC for coming through. Intro looks more like Calyx 3.0 LOL. And you know how I had to put Frotch in there, Haplo. I had to put Frotch in that intro. Had to do it. PBC Mechanics. Shout out Wheelchair Man John as well. What's up? PBC Mechanics busy at Jiffy Lube changing oil and spark plugs tune up, and that's the thing. We'll hit on that a little bit today as to what's going on with the PBC and why fighters are held up at the runway. And we have all flown before, right? And I'm sure if you've flown enough in that situation in which the pilot comes on and he says, or it might even be the pilot's assistant saying, hey, we're held up at the runway, hold tight. And that's what's happening with the PBC is fighter after fighter after fighter after fighter after fighter is just held up on the runway until January. And that's why we have a schedule for the PBC in which only Morrell Jr. November 5th is on the schedule. Nobody else. So frustrating events going on if you're a boxing fan and you have favorite fighters on the PBC, which all of us do. It's a talented umbrella. It's a talented roster of fighters, correct? And a lot of them are held up. And as a boxing fan, you just want to see these guys fight at the end of the day. You just want to see these fighters fight. Salute Punch Perfect Boxing, one of the best channels out there. Salute you coming through. Put Calzaghe. No, we'll never put Calzaghe on the intro. My guy Carl Froch will forever be on the intro. My guy Carl Froch will forever be heralded on this channel. My guy Carl Froch should be in the Hall of Fame. Should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Hopefully he's a second ballot Hall of Famer. The Hall of Fame voters are crazy. Put the guy in. Put the guy in. But Calzaghe will never get on my intro. Ever. And shout out to Calzaghe, all respect in the world, but he won't get on my intro. He will not. He's on plenty of intros. Frotch is on my intro. Got to show my guy Frotch credit. And the reason why, perfect segue, is we like fighters who fight on this channel. We enjoy fighters who, even if their ceiling is lower than other talented fighters, they fight. And they fight the fights. And they fight the best fighters. And that's why we talk about them here. Do you know what Lomachenko is making this weekend? Does anybody know his purse? Lomachenko versus Jermaine Ortiz. Jermaine Ortiz right outside the top 10 lightweight division. Just beat Jamel Herring. Best victory of his career. Undefeated fighter. Do you know what his purse split is for this fight against Lomachenko? Calyx, do you know what the purse split is? No, I don't. Do you know why? Because the fight is happening. Do you know what the purse split is for Jojo Diaz versus Williams and Payne? No, I don't know. And I don't care because they're fighting. Do you know when we hear about what fighters are making and the purse splits is when fights are held up? I know all about the negotiations with Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, and that's why I'm tired of talking about it. I texted D-Style after his show last night that I was on and said, dude, I'm just exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm ready to pivot away from this. I'm ready to pivot away from the business of boxing and talk about actual boxing. I ordered the UFC pay-per-view for some friends and my brother as they were over my house on Saturday. We were watching college football, and I ordered it for them, and I was just watching them in envy. And I even did my own experiment and said, how much is Peter Yan making for this fight? How much is Islam making for this fight? How much is this guy making for it? And none of them knew. And not only did they not know, they looked at me crazy for asking. The more we hear about a fighter's pay, the more we hear about purse splits, all this other stuff. That just tells me that those fighters are tough to deal with. Those fighters aren't fighting the fights. I could care less about what Jermaine Ortiz is making against Lomachenko. I could care less about what Lomachenko is making. I could care less about the purse splits. I don't care. I'm just glad the fights are happening, and I praise the fighters for putting on these fights because guess what? Lomachenko is coming back after his longest layoff, one of his longest layoffs, due to the war in Ukraine. And he's fighting a guy right outside the top 10. And I understand it's not going to be the greatest fight in the world because he's a 25-1 favorite. And I think that's more respect for Lomachenko as it is disrespect for Jermaine Ortiz. Jermaine Ortiz is right outside the top 10 in the lightweight division. And then we got two other lightweights fighting this weekend. Jojo Diaz against Zepeda. Loved that fight. And when that fight was announced, I had a boxing orgasm. Loved it. And what I'm saying is so much is being paid attention to as to Ryan and Tank. Are they going to fight? Are they going to fight? And by the way, what an embarrassment that both fighters look like they're only going to fight once this calendar year. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. And they're going to fight a catchweight at 136. And what I'm saying is let's pay attention to the fighters fighting. Let's pay attention to the fact that there's actual movement going on in the lightweight division this weekend. And let's pay attention and show respect to the fighters trying to become champions. And I'm going to touch on that in a minute. Let me get to some comments. Not neglect these. They will get someone to give them the money. Chicano Prophet, salute you coming through. Calzaghe is I understand he's a Hall of Famer. I get it. And he deserves it. All I'm saying is Frost deserves it too. Haney is ducking. It's too bad Bud versus Spence isn't happening. And JC, I'm going to get to your comments in a minute because that needs to be touched on. It needs to be touched on. It's pause. It's too bad Bud versus Spence isn't happening. I would have delighted to take your $50. And you wouldn't have got it. You wouldn't have got it, which is why one of the reasons why I think we're not getting the fight. See why? Who cares what he is making? That should not be public knowledge. And whether it's public knowledge or not, I don't. The point is, I don't care. Don't care. I don't care what these guys are making. I just want to see the fights. And we're gonna salute. We're gonna pivot into talking about the fights because what you need to understand about the YTBC, how it is now versus how it used to be. Boxing Twitter, how it is now versus how it used to be is channels, journalists, new media. Boxing Twitter has realized that they can monetize the beefs. They can monetize the mythical matchups that don't happen. They can monetize Haney versus Haney versus Lomachenko. That manufactured beef is a perfect example of that. And I'll touch on that in a minute. But they monetize these beefs that are pushed to split people up into different tribes. And then they monetize that. And they'd rather talk about that than the actual fights because for whatever reason, and it's frustrating for me to see, those get more clicks than the actual fights. And I just don't, as I was texting D-Style last night, I just don't have the energy for it anymore. I don't have the energy to talk about purse splits, whose fault it is for this fight not happening, that fight not happening. I don't have the energy for it, man. It wears me down. It wears me down because people come after me from multiple angles with it when it's very easy to see. And you don't have to get deep in the weeds to explain it to people. But it's frustrating and it just zaps a lot of energy. So I'd rather just talk about the fights. PBC, Pretty Boys Company. Shout out my guy Bruce Gass. And Bruce Gass, he and I are of the same tribe. It's just the tribe of wanting to see the fights and talking about fights. I still think Crawford should be blamed as much as PBC, Spence, and Al Heyman. I can bring you to the water, Chauncey. I can't force you to drink it. I can bring you to the water. I can't force you to drink it, my brother. But it is what it is. Shout out to Nando listening from work. Frach can't hold a candle to Calzaghe. Oh, we're going to have to get into that again soon. And I'll have Haplo on the channel, and we can have a further discussion about Frach versus Calzaghe, but that's for another day. UFC is what boxing used to be. I'm not a UFC fan, but I understand why it's more popular than boxing. Seems like Bud gets passed for making a business decision while it looks like a bona fide duck. Chauncey, I can bring you to the water. I can't force you to drink it. William Zepeda is ready to tear heads off. And I hope you're right, CY. I hope you're right, because it would be good for boxing if William Zepeda is seen by more people, because what a fun fighter to watch. But he's in tough this weekend. He's in tough with Jojo Diaz. Jojo Diaz, polished fighter. Jojo Diaz, a guy who's been in there with guys, and Jojo Diaz has a lot more experience, and he's tough. He's tough. He can weather that storm of Zepeda. And Zepeda, past few fights, I hate to say it, man, because I'm such a big fan of Zepeda in the style, but the past few fights, man, it just seems like he's trending a little bit down. I'm glad Loma is back. I respect everything he's about. I just want to see him win a truly big fight. Fair comment. Yes, the poly beef is entertaining. Calix, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Anna Lee. Frotch is Calix's kryptonite. You hate Crotch. You hate Frotch. Polly said nothing everyone has already ignored, but it's still comical nonetheless. And Frotch, Malinaji knows how to ruffle feathers. I just think this came out of nowhere. And I'm about to touch on that. I just want to get to these comments. Yes, it gets tiring, but I following the shadow beefs going on with the PBC cult. Yeah. Now, before we get into the actual fights this weekend and why they're important and why I enjoy fights like this and weekends like this coming up, is before we get into that, the Haney versus Lomachenko thing. While we're talking about Lomachenko, while we're talking about the lightweight division, the reason I don't like this beef being brought up and this manufactured beef being brought up, and I have no issues with Haney not liking Lomachenko, Lomachenko not liking Haney, as long as it's for the right reasons, right? But this narrative coming out from both sides that Lomachenko once ducked Haney, and now Haney is going to duck Lomachenko. It just neither one of them have any legs. And the reason it's coming up is because I think you have people, like I said, who enjoy the trauma clicks, who enjoy the beefs, who enjoy the divisiveness. And what happens after the divisiveness? You have the tribalism, and then what happens after the tribalism? You get the clicks. And what I'm saying here is, just a dude who wants to watch fights, just a boxing fan trying to push the agenda of boxing fans, is you have to praise the fighters who want the fights, who want to be the best. And we shouldn't be tearing down those fighters at the expense of other fighters. So the thing with Haney and Lomachenko is you don't have to go deep into the weeds. And I had D-Style explaining it to people last night, and he was trying to explain it to me further. And you don't have to go that deep into the weeds. It's simple for me. It's track record. Lomachenko, I was reading something earlier. He has the highest percentage of any fighter in the sport of top 10 fights as to how many fights he's fought. And that makes perfect sense, right? The second fight of his career, he steps right into title fights. And then even after losing to Salido, what's he doing in the very next fight? He fights Gary Russell Jr. And some people had Jermaine Ortiz ranked 10. Some people have him 11, 13, but he's right on the outside of it. So if you don't want to count that, that's fine. But still, if you don't want to count that as a top 10 fight, he's still fought top 10 fighter, top 10 fighter, top 10 fighter, top 10 fighter. Even after losing Teofimo Lopez, he fought Nakatani, who was in the top 10 at that time, and Comey at the top 10 at that time. So the guy fights top 10 fighters consistently. So the track record of him not fighting a young Devin Haney, a 20 to 21-year-old Devin Haney who wasn't there yet. And on top of that, you're arguing that Lomachenko is aging himself out, which is ridiculous. So that argument is ridiculous. And you don't have to go deep into the weeds of it. I have people explaining contracts and why this doesn't make sense. You don't have to go there. The track record doesn't line up. And the same thing I say about Devin Haney right now. Because what happens is when somebody makes a claim like that Lomachenko ducked Devin Haney, then you'll have an equally absurd claim on the other side. Right? The pushback is equal. So what happens is they'll come on and explain why Devin Haney is going to duck Lomachenko when the recent track record doesn't add up. And by the way, if Devin Haney does that, we'll call him out on it. But what has happened? Devin Haney has a nice 4-fight run. And I understand, like, it's perfectly fair to say that Haney has the weakest resume of any undisputed champion in the history of boxing in the 4-belt era. That's fair. It's fair. But what is also fair is to say, compared to his peers, he has a nice 2-year run going on right now. Linares, and people can say Linares buzzed Haney at the end of the fight, maybe exposed his chin, but guess what? Linares also got to Lomachenko's chin and actually put him on the floor. Jojo Diaz. Yeah, but Jojo Diaz is a natural 135-pounder, but guess what? Ryan Garcia didn't fight Jojo Diaz when he was supposed to fight Jojo Diaz. Compared to his peers, he has a nice run. Yeah, Kambosos isn't as good as we thought. Yeah, Kambosos is actually a bum. Look, you can say that stuff now, but at the time, it was close to a toss-up fight, and nobody else was willing to go over to Australia to fight this guy and then agree to a rematch clause and go back over there. And Haney did all that. So what I'm saying is, let's show respect to the fighters in the lightweight division, which has been a disappointing division at large. I think it's been mostly a net negative. I think the lightweight division, welterweight division, people claim that these are great divisions just because they see possible talent there, but this talent isn't being realized because the fighters aren't fighting the fights. Correct? And since they're not fighting the fights, we don't know how great these fighters actually are. And on top of that, I explained the Tank Davis theorem, and you can call it the Ryan Garcia theorem as well. These guys claim that the belts don't matter anymore just because they're afraid to go for the belts and be a stationary target. They don't want to campaign in a single weight class anymore. I explained how Ryan Garcia is he's all of a sudden saying I'm at 140, but he's fighting 135 pounders at 140. He's saying, I don't want to be a lightweight anymore. I don't care about the belts anymore. I don't care about the belts anyway. And then you'll see Tank Davis move up and fight Matteo Barrios. And as soon as a guy like Regis Prograis calls him out on Twitter, I'm not a junior welterweight. I'm not a super lightweight. I'm a lightweight. I'm going back down here. And then as soon as a lightweight calls him out, no, I'm actually 140 pounder. These guys become chameleons. They become chameleons just so they're not a stationary target for these younger fighters or these tougher fighters who have more experience to come after them. How convenient is it that they don't care about the belts? They don't. Showtime can be on there and say Tank Davis and promote him as a 3-division champion. Floyd Mayweather can promote him as a 3-division champion. Leonard Ellerbe can promote him as a 3-division champion, but at the same time, say they don't care about the belts. Quite convenient. Quite convenient. But these guys become chameleons. That way nobody can pick them off as stationary targets. So what I'm saying is, let's show respect to, in this case, the lightweights who want to be the best and are striving to be the champion of their division. And they're saying, I'll stick around and defend these belts. I'll try to fight these fighters. Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez. You can say whatever you want about Lomachenko. You can say whatever you want about Teofimo Lopez. Say whatever you want about him. But when everyone else was hiding under their beds, not fighting, when COVID was going on, when the lockdowns were going on, and everybody had an excuse to stay away from each other, what did Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez do? What did they do? They fought the only big fight at that time against 2 of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world, top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. They fought each other in an empty ballroom. They had every excuse on the table to say, we're going to wait till 2021. We're going to wait to see what happens here. We're not going to do this right now. But what did they do? They fought each other. They fought each other. So we can say Teofimo Lopez is acting a certain way now, but at the time he wasn't. We can say, I think Lomachenko's overrated, all this stuff. At the time, these guys fought the fights, and Lomachenko wants to come back. He fought top 10 guys in Nakatani and Comey at the time. He wants to come back, and he wants another shot at Undisputed. He wants a shot at Undisputed. If you don't, there's dispute as to whether Teofimo and Lomachenko was Undisputed. I'm not getting into that, but he wants a shot at Undisputed next year. And what I'm saying is, instead of tearing down these guys who want all the belts, who want to be the best, who are stationary targets, Lomachenko, 135. Devin Haney, 135, who went and consolidated all the belts. He could have easily said, I don't care about belts either. I don't care. I'm not worried about Kambosos and going over to Australia. I'm not worried about the belts and defending them. You know, I'm on the same wave. I'll just keep it easy. Fight easy fights for $3 million minimum per fight. That's fine. But he didn't. He went for the belts, no matter what you think about him. Lomachenko, Haney, no matter what you think about Kambosos and how good of a fighter he is, he wanted the belts. He wanted the fights. So what I'm saying is, respect these fighters who are giving us the fights. And the fighters who we're talking more about purse splits, catch weights, how much they're making per fight, how many Instagram followers they have. What I'm saying is, push those fighters to the side until they do something. The behavior that we reward is the behavior we're going to get more of from the boxing world. The behavior that we shun is the behavior we're going to get less of from the boxing world. But what's going to happen? You're going to see more videos out there this week. What are you going to see? You're going to see Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia discussions. And what are you going to see very little of? You're going to see very little of Lomachenko's back this weekend. Lomachenko versus Jermaine Ortiz fight breakdown. You're going to get very little of Jojo Diaz versus Zepeda fight breakdown. You're going to get very little of all that stuff. And it's unfortunate because you have the number 2 lightweight in the world in Lomachenko coming back against a guy right outside the top 10. And then you've got number 6, according to the ring rankings. I think it's maybe number 6 versus number 7 or number 7 versus number 8. And Jojo Diaz versus Zepeda, and what a banger of a matchup it is. That is a can't miss matchup. That is a matchup that both of these guys want to take each other's head off. Both of these fighters are durable. Both of these fighters don't want to take a step back. Both of these fighters are going to fight in a phone booth. And instead of paying attention to guaranteed entertainment, guaranteed violence, we're going to pay attention to what's happening in a boardroom that none of us are privy to anyway. All of us are going to be lied to about anyway. And you're going to be discussing mythical contracts, the business side of boxing. And it's frustrating because the old YTBC, the old boxing Twitter, was not that way. The old YTBC was all preview videos, prediction videos, fight breakdowns. And now it's what's going on in this negotiation, what's going on in that negotiation. Oh, I hate all of these people. I hate all of those people. It's all tribal. And if you go after Al Heyman, you're racist. I mean, it's all kind of stuff. And I'm just here to talk boxing. I just want to talk boxing. And why aren't we rewarding fighters who are actually fighting with putting content out about them? This is the frustrating part for me about the sport, and it's why I've said my biggest enemy is becoming other boxing fans, and that's frustrating to say too. Is I don't want to get mad at other boxing fans, but how can you not see what's going on? Divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. We're fighting mythical fights for fighters online when the fighters don't even care enough about you to go out there and fight the actual fights. There are people out there, and that's why I don't like, and that's no knock on Chauncey. Chauncey's my guy, but there's no need for us to talk about who would win between Crawford and Spence because Crawford and Spence aren't giving us the fight. You know, who's going to win versus Tank versus Ryan? I would love to talk about it, but I'm not going to talk about it until the fight's signed. I'm not going to go out there and fight their battles for them. And that's why last night was sort of me talking about it the last time on D-Styles channel. I'm going to get my thoughts out there and then I'm done with it because I'm exhausted with it because guess what? Bud Crawford doesn't know that I exist. He doesn't know. So in my heart, and I've laid that out there, long form content that Al Heyman is to blame for this fight not happening, and I'll go to my grave believing that. But at the same time, I'm not going to go out here and die on a hill for Bud Crawford because Bud Crawford doesn't know I exist. I'm going to talk about the fights that are happening. I'm going to talk about Bud Crawford versus Avanesyan when the time comes. And I'm going to continue to talk about the fights that are actually happening and the fighters that are giving me the most entertaining fights and the best matchups out there, instead of the mismatch that we get weekend, every weekend. And like I said, I'll continue to say, I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. Talent comes from everywhere. Talent comes from people of all shapes, colors, doesn't matter to me. Whoever gives me that is who my allegiance is to. Whoever the fight fans are out there, I don't care if you look completely different from me. I don't care if you come from a different world. I don't care if you're what your socio-political background is. Don't care. You want to see the good fights like me? We can be a tribe together. Please bring Canelo. Zepeda is becoming Berlanga. Whoa! 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 Zepeda and Berlanga. Look, we're not there. No, we can't go there. We can't, man. Don't jinx us, CY. Don't jinx this. I've been calling Zepeda the Mexican murder hornet. I love how the dude just gets in there and wants to take your head off, wants to continue to sting. You know, like one of those hornets that continue to sting, but they don't lose their stinger. That's Zepeda. And I hope Zepeda can be that dude. I hope Zepeda can be a guy like everybody in the top 10 just fears. Whether it be at 130, whether 35, whether it be at 140, people just fear him. They don't want to step in the ring with this guy. But I understand this comment. I get it, because the last few times I've seen Zepeda fight, whether it be doing some low intelligence stuff like hitting a fighter when he's down, you know, putting his victory in question, giving the referee an opportunity to possibly take a knockout victory away from him, stuff like that. It worries me. It worries me. And also his last fight where he just did not look like himself. It worries me. So Berlanga vibes, yeah, I get it. But the thing with Zepeda that's different from Berlanga is Zepeda wants to fight the fights, number one. And two, Zepeda, whether he wins or loses in the future, his success, his appeal isn't dependent on him winning or losing. His appeal is that he's going to be entertaining whether he wins or loses. So even if Zepeda were to get knocked out, as long as he's entertaining in the knockout, guess who's still going to be there watching his next fight? Me. Zepeda and Mauricio Lara are quick becoming favorites of mine. Lara goes in to knock people out. That's true. That's true. If Cameron stops JoJo, that would be Cameron. Yeah. Lomachenko ducking is ignorant at best. And that's my point with the Lomachenko versus Haney thing is let's let this play out. Let's see what happens with Lomachenko this weekend. If what I think happens is going to happen, we're going to get Lomachenko versus Haney or Haney versus Lomachenko in the spring. I very much, when Bob says he wants to deliver the fight, I think Bob wants to deliver the fight. I've always felt like Bob feels like Haney is sort of expendable. He's not afraid to put Haney in danger. And Lomachenko is danger. And guess what? Haney's not afraid of putting himself in danger because Haney, I think, is more of a throwback type guy. He just wants to fight the fights and he feels like he's the best and he doesn't like disrespect. He has a chip on his shoulder. I've observed that about him. No matter what we think about his ceiling, we got to give him that. And there is no track record between either fight. When is Lomachenko, like, really? This is a high intelligence chat. When has Lomachenko ducked a fight? Like, I mean, really? Like I said, out of all the fighters in boxing, highest percentage of fighting top 10 opponents. Almost every fight, he's fighting a top 10 opponent. He's put together a nice, thick resume in a short amount of fights. In Haney, his recent track record tells us he wants the smoke. When Haney says he wants to fight Lomachenko, I believe him. I have no. Here's the thing. Here's what I'll say. I have no reason to doubt that. I have no reason to question it. So what I'm saying to like a Paulie Malignaggi, and I'm not disrespecting Paulie Malignaggi because I have no idea where all this is coming from. I didn't see his comments in full, but if he's saying that he thinks that Haney's going to duck Lomachenko, I think he's going to be wrong. I think he's going to be wrong. And until that happens, I don't understand why we're questioning whether Haney will fight Lomachenko or not, because from what I've seen, I think Haney's going to fight Lomachenko. I don't think that Haney fears Lomachenko, and Lomachenko has never feared anybody from what I've seen. I don't see anybody out there that Lomachenko fears. I haven't seen that. I haven't observed that from his decade-long career. I just haven't. So I want to pay attention. I want to respect the fighters who are fighting the fights, the fighters who want to be the best, the fighters who want to give us the top value fights. And there are fighters, there's a short list at 135 of guys who want to do that at the top of 135. And that's been the frustrating part about the lightweight division is Ryan's not going to be there. Tank isn't going to be there. And by the way, I love that matchup. I hope it comes off. One of the most entertaining matchups in boxing, both economical fighters who will put you on your seat with one punch, Ryan and Tank. They will give up rounds to inferior opposition, but they can cancel all that out with one punch. That's one of those fights where you'll be sitting on the edge of your seat on pins and needles the whole time because you know the fight can turn on a dime. Love it. But I don't love their behavior as fighters throughout their career up to this point. And when I see a catch weight of 136, I say there is no need to put them in the rankings anymore. They don't want to fight for the belts. They have no interest in that. They have no interest in campaigning in a weight class. No interest in that. Why are we even putting them in top 10 rankings anymore? They're not interested in it. They've already said they're not interested in the sport aspect of the sport. They're interested in the business aspect of the sport. And what I'm saying as a fight fan who wants to push the agenda of fight fans, I'd rather the fighters who are fighting for the sport of the sport. Now, I understand it's a business. I understand that they have to be monetized for it. I'm not trying to take that away from them. What I'm saying is we reward the behavior of the fighters who consistently give us the sport aspect of the sport as opposed to the business aspect of the sport. If I'm hearing about purse splits and how much a fighter makes, and I know more about the fighter's economics than I do the technical aspects of the fighter, then I know that the fighter is doing something wrong, at least in my eyes as a boxing fan. Because I just want to see the fights. Warrington should stay an ocean away from Lara. Lara will still wants a piece of him as well as Lee Wood too. He'll demolish both. And my guy D-Style claims that Lara is Warrington's father. And Lara is waiting to fight Warrington again on Father's Day. Winning 2 fights in Australia is a huge achievement. People need to pay more respect to Haney. Yeah, I think at the time, yeah, until he proves otherwise. That's right. And there are criticisms that are fair, right? I have my questions as to whether this guy can translate to 140 with no power. And when he steps in there with killers at 140 who can test the chin, that he can't just jab and hold to death. And that's my question as far as Lomachenko. And that's the biggest question mark at 135 for Haney is Lomachenko isn't going to allow him to hit and hold. He's not. He's just not. He's not. So I can visualize Haney beating Lomachenko. I can. But it's not going to be easy. He's not going to be able to do it the Kambosos way. He's not going to be able to do it the Jojo Diaz way. He's not going to be able to do it the Linares way. He's not. He's going to be in a dogfight with Lomachenko. He's going to have to use that right hand a lot more than he's used to using it. You're not going to be able to beat Lomachenko with one hand. Not going to happen. Teofimo fought a great fight against Lomachenko. And whether Lomachenko had a torn rotator cuff or not, it doesn't matter to me. He was in the ring. But Teofimo fought a great fight. He did it by using both hands. He did it with quickness and power. In a lot of ways, he beat Lomachenko at his own game. Can Haney do that? How did Salido beat Lomachenko? Lomachenko wasn't the seasoned vet. Salido was. Salido used some dirty professional tactics, and you can't blame him for that. They worked. They worked, and that's how he beat him. He sort of just roughed him up early in the fight. And how did Teofimo beat Lomachenko? He did it a lot of the same ways. He roughed him up in a lot of ways. But can Haney fight that type of fight against Lomachenko? I have my doubts. Can you beat Lomachenko with one hand? Just don't see it. I don't see it. That's why I love that fight. Could also throw the Shakur-Stevenson theorem as well. Really good fight. Great points as always. Appreciate you coming through. Facts, Calix. I'll be in attendance. Let's see what else we got. My guy Remy in the building. Shout out Remy. Salute, Calix. PBC wants to keep the few belts their fights have on their side of the street and any of their guys that have an O so they can market them without risks, i.e. Jamal and Spence. And for the life of me, how does Jamal still have a belt? How does he still have that belt? When I'm glad as much as I dislike what Fury is doing right now, I'm glad that he's been able to hold on to that WBC to make versus Fury easier to make once that comes about. And I do feel like that fight will happen in the spring because Fury does this, right? He does this before every big fight, what he's doing right now, but then he'll eventually get to it. Klitschko, Wilder, and now Usyk. I think they'll eventually get to it. But I was glad that he was able to keep that WBC and it didn't go into PBC hands because Wilder and Ruiz, if it would have went to that, I wouldn't have liked that. We know they hold up belts over there. We know they hold up fights over there. They're holding up their own fighters on the tarmac right now. Wait till January. Wait till 2023. Wait till the new budget. Wait till the new budget. We have to re-up. We have to re-up. We're out of money right now. And that's why you only have Morrell Jr. on the schedule. The only fans I always see talking about money are PBC and LDBC fans. Get the bag. Get the bag. Get the bag. Get the bag. And if what's being reported is true, then what did Bud do? He went and got his bag, right? Got tired of being held up. He went and got his bag. No point continuing talking about it. That's how I feel. Speaking of Zepeda, anyone going to Zepeda, Regis in LA, and if that wasn't on Thanksgiving weekend, I'd be out there to support my New Orleans brethren, and what a fight that is going to be. And my guy Nando seems to think that Prograis is going to be upset, and Prograis is a 2-1 favorite right now, as he should be, but that's going to be a good fight. Haney can fight Loma, Tank, or Ryan. Happy with any of those in whatever order. And it's not going to be Tank or Ryan, so you got to take Loma. Loma never ducked. No, of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. He never ducked. He never ducked anybody. He just didn't. Like, stop with these crazy tactics, these crazy diversion tactics, these crazy divisive tactics. It doesn't work on real intelligent boxing fans. And Haney's not going to duck Lomachenko either. That's what my instincts tell me. My instincts tell me that fight's going to happen. He sidestepped Haney and dropped the title. No, Haplo. No, he didn't. Lara is good, but punches very wide. Haney can do it the TO way, control him with the jab, and use your length. I just think if we're watching film on Haney and Lomachenko, and once again, this is mythical, right? It doesn't always play out that way in the ring. Haney's going to have to, you know how many power punches Haney landed in the first Kambosos fight? It was 69. Pause. And so that's less than, I believe, 6 per round. You're not going to be able to land 5 to 6 power punches per round against Lomachenko and keep him honest. He's going to be using those angles, throwing his shots. You're not going to be able to just up jab and hold him. That middle range that Kambosos could never find, Kambosos could never work in that middle range. Haney completely took it away from him, completely isolated it. took it away. Lomachenko is going to find that middle range in the fight. He is. He's going to force Haney into combination trades. Both fighters are going to have to trade in this fight. And in those trades, is Haney going to be able to land meaningful right hands? And not only to keep him honest, is like when you go to the scorecards against Lomachenko, who's throwing flashy shots, the exception there being the Teofimo fight, in which Lomachenko just didn't do anything the first 7 rounds. And it was an easy fight to score. But when you have a fight where there's trades, and I guarantee you Lomachenko learned his lesson from the Teofimo. He can't come out complacent. He can't come out. And I've noticed it. The Nakatani fight and the Comey fight, he came out a little more aggressive than he has in the past. Because the argument, the criticism of Lomachenko is early in fights, right? Which could be overcritical because he's jumped on fighters early in fights before. But is Haney the type of guy who can jump on him early? Is Haney the type of guy who can land power shots that are going to be flashy to the judges and win 7 rounds against Lomachenko? Because we know he's not going to knock him out. We know that's off the table. It's off the table. He's got one pathway to victory. Outbox Lomachenko, and can he do it with one hand? Or can he find something with that right hand in that fight? Drop that right hand when he tries to get inside. And Haney keeps that right hand here. And I've done the film study on it. The Art of the Up Jab, Devin Haney. I dropped that if you want to go to the channel after the live. He keeps the right hand here. And the left hand is low. That way he can throw the up jab, and the left hand is the weapon. The right hand is the defense. And he threw the right hand more in the Kambosos fight. And he's quick enough to where the right hand keeps you honest when he lands, even though it's not a powerful shot. He's a fast fighter. You've got fast, super fast reflexes. But once again, so does Lomachenko. But Lomachenko's reflexes have slowed throughout his career. And I think we're going to get a better read on it after Saturday. And you can say, yes, 25-1 favor for Lomachenko. So we're not going to learn much from this fight. I kind of disagree because this is a longer layoff than normal. And it's against a fighter who can put up some resistance against him. 25-1, I get it. I get former sparring partner. I get all that. But he is a guy coming off the win against Herring. He is a guy who is getting better by each fight. If you watch Jermaine Ortiz fight, each fight he's getting a little bit better. So he will put up some resistance, and we'll get a good read on, we'll get somewhat of a read on where Lomachenko is at this point in his career, because he's been around. He may not have fought a lot of fights, but he's been around. He fought a ton of amateur fights. And your prime, as I've explained, only lasts so long as a boxer. You may get 2, 3, possibly 4 years. Lomachenko is out of his prime. He's not there anymore. He's not in his prime. And a guy like Lomachenko, he's heavily dependent on his athleticism, his footwork, his reflexes, using those angles. And that's why I really like this Haney-Lomachenko fight, because Lomachenko has slowed down a little bit. Lomachenko in his prime is a no-brainer for me. I think he works Devin Haney, but he's not in his prime anymore. He's just not. And we've seen also, as a fighter gets out of his prime, he actually becomes a little more entertaining because the reflexes have slowed down. He's going to get hit a little more, and he trades more. And that's what's going to happen in this fight. Haney isn't outboxing Loma. Good luck. Yeah, he's going to have to find something that I haven't seen from him yet. Haney has problems with fighters coming forward aggressively. Steven 4722, shout out to you. Paulie was right. Let's see. What do you call taking the franchise so he doesn't have to fight Haney? I mean, he clearly did that. And this is what I talk about getting in the weeds. And there are other channels out there who will have this debate with you, Haplo, and will push back on what you just said. I prefer not to get into weeds with that. And what I'll say is I go off of track record. What other fighter has Lomachenko ducked? And why would he duck a 20 to 21-year-old Devin Haney? It just doesn't add up. And why would he age himself out? Does he just think that Devin Haney is going to go away eventually? And then it's the same thing on the other side. It's why do people think that Haney's going to duck Lomachenko in the spring? I just don't see it. I think this fight's going to happen. These guys are going to figure this out. They're going to figure this out. I trust Bob Arum that he's going to put this fight on. I think it's the right time, and Bob knows it's the right time. And Bob knows he can make money off of this fight. And Bob knows either way it goes is good for him. If Haney beats Lomachenko, he offers Haney another contract. Haney may become a bigger star after beating Lomachenko. And Lomachenko may be out the door anyway. If Lomachenko beats Haney, then he can further push the Lomachenko train. Now Lomachenko is undisputed lightweight champion on top of everything else Lomachenko has. He has incentive to fight. He has motive to make this fight. And me as a boxing fan sizing these guys up, going off of track record, both of these guys seem like real ones. They seem like guys who want to fight the fights. So I'm not going to tear down either one of them right now. I'm just not going to do that until I see a reason to do that. True real fans just want the best fights and don't play Fanager, Tank, and Ryan pretending they're going to fight. It's another saga that's already gone on too long, and I hope they do fight. I hope they do. And I've talked about the Tank and Ryan theorem. I've talked about all this stuff, all the negatives about them, but guess what? They fight. This guy will either be there or buy the fight. I am. It's a great fight. Tank versus Ryan's a great fight. And the frustrating part about it is it's not going to go anywhere after, right? Like if Tank were to beat Ryan, he doesn't have the track record of a guy who's going to run with that victory and go fight top fights after that. The same with Ryan up to this point. I think this is a type of thing where you might see Tank versus Ryan 2, Tank versus Ryan 3. They just might decide that they're going to have their own little rivalry and battle for a year and a half, 2 years. And as long as the fights are good, I'm fine with that. I'm to the point right now where I'm reserved to what I think about Tank versus Ryan. Tank and Ryan as fighters. Talented fighters who can sell. Tank can sell in LA. Tank can sell in Vegas. Tank can sell in DC. Tank can sell in Atlanta. Tank can sell in New York. He's probably not doing great pay-per-view numbers. We don't know anyway, but I'm assuming his pay-per-view numbers aren't that good. Ryan is a guy who, when I talk to the casual fans, they know Ryan. And they know him from Instagram. Instagram has reach with people. And him hitting the double in bag, him doing all the stuff he's doing with the body punching on IG, it works. I'm telling you it works because they know Ryan. They know Canelo. They know Ryan. They know AJ. The guys I talk to know those three fighters. They know them. They know them. So Tank versus Ryan will sell. And it's going to do a huge live gate wherever it comes off at. All right. But I'm reserved to the fact with these two fighters that no matter who wins the fight, let's say it's Ryan. I don't trust that Ryan's going to take that victory and move on to bigger and better things after that fight, continue to fight top fights. I'm reserved to that. I'm reserved to the fact that it's what I said about putting these guys in the top 10 in these divisions that they're not even campaigning in. When I see Tank Davis, number 3 at lightweight, and Ryan, number 4, they're not even there. They're fighting at 136. If they do fight each other, they're going to fight at a catch weight. They're not campaigning at 135. They're not seriously campaigning at 140. One of them's fighting 135 pounders at 140. They're both saying, no, I'm not a lightweight. No, I'm not a junior welterweight either. And both of them are saying they don't care about the belt. So as a boxing fan, what I say with that is if they give me good fights, so be it. But I'm reserved to the fact that they're not going to consistently give me good fights. And if so, I know where to put, I know how to compartmentalize that at this point. Talented fighter, yes, but are you going to have that great legacy? Is Ryan Garcia going to be sitting in a bar 25 years from now, and they're going to be people coming up to him and say, I remember when you fought this guy? And Tank's going to be saying, I remember, they're going to be walking up to Tank, I remember when you said you were going to fight that guy. And that's where I'm at. D-Style in the building. D-Style, we're going to have time to talk about this and roundtable as well. But just some of your thoughts on the fights coming up this weekend. And like, what is your excitement level for these fights? Because I like these fights. I like that the lightweight division is doing something.
Well, Zepeda JoJo's this weekend, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So I like that fight. It's going to be exciting regardless of who wins. That's number one. But second, I'm anticipating Zepeda to win. I'm kind of favoring him to win this fight. I know he hasn't looked the greatest, but JoJo, he's going to come to fight. He always does. And JoJo depends on a lot of activity and a lot of action. And I don't know if that's the right thing to do against Zepeda. The question is, can JoJo maybe take out his amateur experience and do a little more boxing around the guy? I think that's his pathway to victory, but I don't think he will. And even then, sometimes that's not the right answer. The stalker could get to you, and you just don't want to be stalked, And
he worries me. Like Zepeda just worries me. Like the past couple of fights, he just seems to be trending down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's it's just more resistance, right? So somebody brought up Berlanga earlier. I think that's harsh, right? Because even if Zepeda loses, he's still one of those type of fighters that his draw isn't wins or losses. His draw is going to be he's going to be in entertaining fights regardless.
Plus, we have to analyze what does that mean? Like when we say, "Oh man, he looks so good in those fights," that's because of the lens that you're watching it in. If you're watching a fight and you're expecting just to steal one of your lines for a guy to be shooting a deer in a cage, if that's what you're expecting, but the guy's fighting back, they're making it difficult for him in the fight, and it doesn't look pretty doing it, but he still, does it and he still wins. To me, that's impressive, right? But when a fighter overcomes obstacles and overcomes fighters that are trying to make it ugly, trying to, spoil the party, and you still come out on top, to me, that's impressive, right? But those are the real challenges fighters are going to face. That's the way it is. That's just the reality of things. You're not going to look spectacular unless you're fighting someone who's really there to beat you.
Flawless victory syndrome, right?
That's what it is. Like people want these flawless victories, but you look better in the fights where guys are coming to win than the guys trying to survive, right? The survivor is making it tough on you. You got to find them, that they're not engaging because they have no interest in winning that round. You're having to kind of extend your punches more and go that little extra to try to catch up to them. Whereas someone who's trying to win is going to open themselves more because they're trying to beat you, right? They're taking calculated risk, but they're taking risk in the process of fighting you, right? And look, it could go both ways. They could end up beating you, or you end up looking great because, they open themselves up.
Yeah, and this is why I'm intrigued by this fight is Jojo Diaz isn't going to go away. Jojo Diaz has never been knocked out. Jojo Diaz is going to put up that resistance, and this is going to turn into front foot fight, phone booth fight, and who can impose their will on the other guy. And I just don't see Diaz going away. So will Diaz be able to start to, as the fight goes on, sort of take advantage of some of the things we may have been seeing with Zepeda in the next couple of fights? Or will this be Zepeda's shining moment to where even if Diaz puts up that resistance, we see possibly that Zepeda is more layered than we thought. Zepeda can still win a 12-round decision against a guy like Diaz. Or possibly that Zepeda can even wear down a Diaz and knock him out. These are the intriguing things that I have, but we're going to find out. This is why I'm intrigued by it. Diaz is a great barometer. He just is. Like, he's a great barometer there, and we're going to see the real Zepeda in this fight, who he is. That's why I love
Yes.
fights like this.
For better or for worse.
For better or worse, we're going to find out. And the other interesting thing is, I understand Lomachenko is a 25-1 favorite. I get it. But Jermaine Ortiz coming off the Herring win, depending on where you look, some people have Ortiz number 10 in their rankings, but in reality, he's somewhere between like 11 and 15. Undefeated fighter who seems to be getting better with each fight. And he beat a guy like Herring who was out. He was on his way out the door anyway, but we're going to see like we're going to kind of get a gauge at where Lomachenko is, and he's going to knock off.
Yeah, like just to kind of give people some perspective here, okay? Obviously, in sports in general, it's a "what have you done for me lately" world. That's the way it is, and I'm guilty of that. We're all kind of guilty of that, but let's really analyze it for a second, okay? William Zepeda, okay, his last fight went the distance, but before that, he knocked the guy out in the third. Before that, on the fourth. Before that, in the sixth. Before that, the fifth. Before that, the sixth. Before that, the third. I mean, he went through this run of knocking everybody out, and then the one time, this is what it has. He goes distance one time, right? And by the way, it's not the first time. You know, he has 26 fights, 23 he has stopped. But the guy he fought, Rene Alvarado, is a pretty durable dude. Like, this is a guy that went the distance against Lamont Roach, right? And Zepeda beat him wide on the scorecards. So I don't really necessarily, I guess I just don't understand the panic that people have, you know?
I think what it was he had some great highlight reel performances with knockouts, and he just throwing a million punches per minute. And then he had the fight where he hit a guy while he was down. So you worry about his intelligence level. He got caught with a shot in one of those fights and went down. Although boxing is littered with fighters who get knocked down and then are perfectly fine throughout their career. It happens, especially early in their career. And then he had the last fight where it was a closer decision than people expected. So I think that's what it was. It was people's expectations of him.
Yeah, it was close, but people need to, like, again, the guy he beat had two close fights with Roger Gutierrez, right? Two close fights that were very, very close. And this was at the highest level. This was for a world championship fight. He was a champion. He lost the belt. In rematch, he lost it. Then he lost wide to Lamont Roach, and then he lost to William Zepeda. I mean, it just isn't a guy you just knock out. There's some guys that they may have a lot of losses, but they don't just get knocked out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing here, like, personally.
Yeah. And we'll talk about our predictions as far as this fight later on in the week, because I'm kind of going back and forth with this, and I don't have my mind made up, but I just love this match. I think this is one of the best matchups in quite a while in boxing, and it's flying under the radar, unfortunately, because I can't even get the betting odds on Caesar's app yet. It's not even up, so it's flying under the radar, literally.
He had a closer fight. Yeah, like, I think that division, by the way, there's a lot going on in that division, like a lot, you know. So I can't wait for that fight. But I will say this: I think William Zepeda wins by stoppage. I think we're gonna see that JoJo's a little undersized for this division.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because it's flying out there for whatever reason. It's this narrative that is going out there, and I think Paulie has started a lot of this. Haney ducking Lomachenko, even though there's nothing to duck yet. Lomachenko's fighting this weekend. I just don't buy that. But also the narrative being pushed back from Haney fans that Loma once ducked Haney. And you have a lot of people buying that narrative as well. Can you sort of give your thoughts on this whole narrative? And I've given my thoughts on it. I think it's all nonsense.
You know what it is? It's all
like neither fighter fears each other. It's obvious. It's obvious.
It's all it is revenge. Like, oh, Haney was accusing Loma of ducking. It's really the fans. The fans are, and so now the Loma fans are going to accuse Haney of ducking, and that's all it is, right? And we know, look, Paulie, he goes that hard for the Eastern European fighters for whatever reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's been doing. He went on record saying that Eastern European fighters run boxing, even though the numbers don't show that. I mean, I'm not saying they're not a force in boxing; they are, but
they're gaining momentum, right? We're judging them against what they used to be, but the numbers still don't. The
numbers don't show that like at all, right? But for whatever reason, that's how he feels, right? It's all circumstantial. I mean, look, let's just look at the facts. The facts are Lomachenko moved up to lightweight. He wanted to get all the belts. Top Rank was in a position to give him that. That's why he got like 3 of the belts, and then Teofimo had one of them, and they decided to do an undisputed fight. Whether people agree with this or not, Loma requested franchise status to make that Teofimo fight happen for undisputed, right? When he didn't have to do that, but it's whatever. But and now that Haney is in his position, I mean, I just haven't seen. I've seen people say he's going to duck Loma, but I just don't see it.
No,
personally,
I think the fight's going to happen. I think it's going to come off without a hitch.
It was everything that happened was just circumstantial, bro. Like it was just easier to do the Teofimo fight because they were both the Top Rank. That's really what it was. Like, why is it okay for Spence to do that for some fans, but not Loma? And Loma did it in a year. Like, he didn't do it in 4 years. You know what I mean? No. In the same year, he got all the belts. You know, he was in a fight for undisputed or whatever in the year, and then like, okay, whatever, you know. But I just think it's all circumstantial. I don't think anybody's ducking anybody.
And on top of that, you know, my position on it is I don't think either one has shown a track record of fearing the other one. I don't think Lomachenko, like I said it earlier, he has the highest percentage of top 10 fights of any fighter in the sport. So he's fighting good competition. He's gotten an inkling that he feared anybody. And then I don't get the inclination that Haney fears Lomachenko. I don't. I think Haney wants all the smoke. I think Haney wants to fight Lomachenko in the spring. And I think Bob's going to deliver that fight. I don't see anything to the contrary up until this point. I don't know where this is coming from. I will say this. Until Haney proves otherwise, I have to believe that Haney versus Lomachenko is happening in the spring. I don't understand where Paulie's coming from with this.
Yeah, I don't understand where Paulie's coming from with it at all, but it is what it is. I just want to say one more thing. So I was watching some videos of Spence fan. I guess his narrative has been around for a while, but the narrative is if Bud really wanted the Spence fight, why didn't he go the IBF route then? Right? Okay, fair enough. But I do know somebody that did go the IBF route. His name is Boots. So are y'all going to stay consistent? Are we do the Boots fight? Because Boots been waiting for his shot, right? He won what they said Crawford should have done. That's what Boots did. Boots is number 1 in the IBF. Let's be consistent, and let's do Spence versus Boots.
Yeah. And
let's say I concede the point. Okay, I'll concede it. Fine. All right. So anyone who goes the IBF route gets a fight, right?
Yeah. So you got to fight Boots.
Got to fight Boots.
Spence versus Boots next, right?
Spence versus Boots. He won the IBF route.
And stuff like this, like 15 million.
I don't think it's about 15 million.
No, and there's no way of us knowing. So it's a non-starter. So on that note, we're going to be here again tomorrow. We're going to be on D-Styles channel Thursday night for the roundtable. And by the way, who we got on the roundtable Thursday night so far?
Yeah, well, we got ourselves a good amount of people here. So we're going to have Coach Collinsworth. He's going to be making his appearance on the roundtable. We're also going to have Christine Nika and also Lo Hanshaw as well will be on. So it's going to be a good show.
It will be a good show. And we will see y'all tomorrow over here around the same time. Thanks for coming through. Peace.
Peace.